Yeah,
I think that was
good
a whole
stuff.
show on Amazon, wasn't it?
It is The Man in the High
Man
Tower.
in the High Tower, based on the book.
Yeah, I didn't watch that because like I hate the Nazis so much. I genuinely did. Like I'm like I don't want to see where they won. Like we won.
Yeah, I saw the map.
Why do they even get a show?
Like why do they even get a show? They lost. Like when I saw a map of that show, because like when they were promoting it years ago, it showed like, oh, the continental United States, it gets split up with this side being Nazi run and this side being Japanese one.
Mm-hmm.
There was such a huge part that was Japanese. I'm like, even in a fantasy world, I can't imagine Imperial Japan exerting power over an area this large. They couldn't.
They did in China.
The Nazis couldn't have done that either. Exerted power all the way on us. Nah.
The Japanese did though. If you look at like Indonesia and China, like they were
a little higher up than Indonesia.
Well,
they conquered a huge part of coastal China. Like China lost like a third of its territory to Japan.
Yeah. China until like 60 years ago, China was just like, oh, if we have enough people, we can kind of win. Like they didn't really do anything. Yeah. Now they're just now figuring it out and starting to excel.
The Japanese were in China in like either 31 or 33. So like a decade before World War II was in its full on swing and all the allies are actually doing something. They killed so many people. I always say the Japanese are worse than the Nazis. The Nazis just have a not as good of a press agent or something. It's weird. You'd think they'd be able to get one.
So to go back
to Stalin would be.
I got a personal story about this. To go back to the family thing, my wife's grandmother was a survivor of the rape of Nanking. Ooh. It was really bad. So I got to hear these are secondhand stories passed down. But it was like when the Japanese would come through, they would like just cover themselves in mud and roll in shit and like rip out their hair and like put mud in their teeth and stuff like that. So the
joke's on you. That's my type.
They all look like old.
Oh, you look like Japanese woman.
They were sexually assaulting people, and they also were sort of subjected to indiscriminate bombing. So when sunset, there was no lights. Nobody would turn on lights. They would have these very, very, very damp lanterns with a lot of purple and blue, like glass light dampeners that would be like very hidden because they didn't want anything to be visible from above, or they would just get flattened. And Japan did terrible stuff. There's Unit 731. I think we talked about that before. Human experimentation. We gave all of them a pass. They did worse than the Nazis, and we gave them a pass in exchange for the data. They went back to Japan and got a hero's welcome parade. It was an absolute nightmare.
Did we steal any Japanese scientists for the moon, or did we just steal?
We took the data.
I know we stole the Nazis, but what about
the data? So it's an interesting moral quandary, right? They do have some pretty good data. Now, often it is the data of how long does it take a malnourished, beaten prisoner to freeze to death? And it's like, okay, now we know how.
Well, how much a breach can I inject?
Yeah, exactly.
That was too much.
They did stuff like that. How much poison can you take? How much skin can get burned before you just go into shock and die? How long it takes to bleed? They did this one. I saw they like strap Japanese people up to poles, sort of at a distance from like 0 to maybe 50 meters, and would detonate various grenades and landmines and stuff. And then a guy would come by and check the Chinese prisoners and kind of like assess the damage and see who got hit the worst. And they were kind of like getting the optimal range for their explosives.
How do you have time to do this when you're like losing a war?
They weren't losing a war. They were dominating. This is in the 30s. So they were, when they got a new troop to the unit in China, they would blood him right away by having him bayonet practice on prisoners they would tie up. It was like, go ahead and kill that guy. Go ahead and kill him real quick. Yeah, let's all watch.
Taylor's like, how do you have time to do this when you're losing a war? And Kyle's like, they're winning. Is winning a war less time consuming? Like, do you have time for?
It's definitely less resource
so in
intensive.
Nanking,
if you're like dominating on two fronts, you can be like, oh yeah, let's have a little games in Berlin. But if you're like getting pressed from all sides,
that wasn't the case.
Were they doing the Unit 7 whatever stuff towards the end?
Or no, like almost pretty shortly after the invasion. I think maybe like a year, however long it took them to build a base of operations, and they were just rolling that out.
With the Chinese though, like they were that's how war had always gone, right? You'd fight your war, you'd conquer the city, and then you would do awful things to the people there and rob them.
I mean, the Japanese.
Yeah,
that's what the Japanese were doing in China, and like with Nanking and especially, like if you want some really fun, not fun, like
nightmare,
horrible.
Some interesting and like powerful history. The rape of Nanking is one of the most horrific and well documented events in history. It's crazy the amount of deaths and the amount of torture and rape and just horror. Yeah, just horror for the.
They branded it correctly.
Yeah,
for
babies
what
on
was going
bayonets type
Yeah,
scenario.
they'd cut the babies out of pregnant women and stuff like that. Just they do
Terrible
a lot of that
PR.
same stuff in North Korea. That's like a pretty like if you're in one of those prison camps, that's sort of like a normal punishment.
You know what's funny? I was right about to be like, "Damn, the Japanese got off easy. We should have really hit them." And then I remembered the 2 nuclear bombs that we used on them. All right, tit for tat, tit for tat.
Don't forget what happened. And then we reworked their society into something that pleased our eye for the next decade. We stayed. We didn't leave. We moved in. We're like, how y'all like? They already like baseball, but we're like, y'all really like it now. Trust me. Like the Japanese government made women comfort women. They just like they enlisted a lot of women to be whores for the Americans to keep them like happy.
They did the same to Korea and China as well for their soldiers in that time.
Yeah. The Japs know how to apologize.
I guess you're right.
They give you that low bow.
We also screwed up their society because we they were running their way, their thing, and we brought in sort of like Judeo-Christian values. I think we restricted work on Sunday. We banned cannabis, which they had been using for various sacraments for a very long time. We banned pornography, which they had for a long time, which is one of the reasons that Japanese porn is so weird, is they had to come up with all these like sort of bizarre ways to get around the American censorship. And that lessened over time, but I think we maintained ownership of like full ownership of Okinawa until what, the 90s, early 2000s. They got it back. We get to keep the base, but we had the whole, like, that was technically American territory as per the Treaty of Surrender, if I'm not mistaken.
If I were in charge of the porn policy, and let's say Kyle's like my lieutenant, and I'm
Dudes
like, no
only.
more porn for the Japanese. If Kyle comes to me and he's like, General, you're not going to believe what they're doing, and then he shows me like tentacle stuff, I'm going to like call the president and be like, it's backfired, sir.
No, you're not. You're going to be so excited.
You're
we got to
weirder
import
than
this
ever.
right now.
We got to shut it down. We got to let them. No more pixelated dicks. They're getting strange out here. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not
really not fair.
Like people talk about pulling the ladder up behind you and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that's not fair. That's not fair to say. Like it's either right or it's wrong, regardless of anything else. And it just seems like you took out a loan. Was it a predatory loan? Yes. Were you 18 years old? Also, yes. All right. And then I bet there's a lot of guys in the Army and the Marine Corps right now who are like, fuck, what did I say?
Right.
I mean, I'm 18 next month. They let me sign. They'll let you sign months before you're 18, I think, as long as you're 18 when you enlist. Maybe.
Really? I didn't know that.
I could be wrong. I probably just made that up. That seems like a thing they do, though, right?
I feel like I remember something about that.
You know, Cotton Hill joined when he was 14. Had to lie.
Who
did?
Cotton Hill.
Oh, Cotton Hill. Yeah. Well, he was a hero and he killed 50 men. So
he did kill 50 men.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about?
Cotton Hill is Hank Hill's father. He was a hero.
Ah, okay.
Although
Iwo Jima, he was also in Germany.
In Germany and Japan.
Probably wasn't in Germany. That was probably a lie. But they did shoot his shins off with a Jap machine gun. So
I did like that, where he'd been going around for like 60 years saying that he fought in Germany, and Peggy's like, Cotton, you did not fight in Germany. And he's like, yeah. It appears I didn't.
Oh no, he straight up lied. He was like, yes, I did. Well, then you didn't fight in Saipan. Yes, I did. His stories be like he was. They were shipping him across the sea. They're shipping us across the sea, and the Japs torpedoed our PT boat. We went down.
They're talking about a cartoon.
We're talking about a good
cartoon. I'm like trying to put context clues together here to figure out what's going on.
Woody.
Greatest generation, Cotton Hill.
Just to bring it back around, we were talking about World War II at the beginning. Like, Japan invaded China. They industrialized a little faster, a little better. They had automatics, better weapons. China had like bolt action rifles and like wooden bullets, and they would send out 2 soldiers with 1 rifle. So if one dies, the other one can pick it up and stuff like that. That kind of equipment difference is massive.
Was China was it Mao, the ruler at one point, who was like, we need a lot of peasants to have weapons, and so I'm ordering people to melt down their like pig iron quality pitchforks and make it into shitty swords.
I think
and they like destroyed an enormous part.
Oh, he's talking about different.
No, I'm saying like,
talking about the big
Mao
famine
do that. Like, I know he did the bird thing, and then didn't he also force farmers to like create weapons out of their farming tools, and then basically just turn in their farming tools to become metal for the war, but none of it was the quality necessary.
Swords,
to make
he wanted to literally
like
turn swords into plowshares or something.
Yeah, the
inverse.
inverse. Yeah,
the inverse. Yeah, there's a lot of that, like political minded dictators, this top to bottom. Like, I don't like the way things are. They're now like this, and then the society just is destroyed.
Yeah, that turns out we needed those birds a lot.
Like,
I think you're talking about the birds that they killed them all, and then it caused the famine because they were part of the ecosystem or something.
Sparrows, yeah. We've talked about Mao doing that. He was a bit of a kook.
Sparrows ate the bugs, and so without the sparrows, the bugs were everywhere, and they ate all the crops, and the people all starved to death. And then Pol Pot, I think, did a thing where like he was like, anybody with glasses is dead.
In Cambodia, yeah, he's like, oh, you can read, bitch, you done.
Anyone with glasses was considered like an intellectual of like this upper like bourgeois class. They had to
Makes sense.
They had to go.
Yeah, that was the Khmer Rouge, right?
It was
horrible. You guys be in trouble, huh? God damn.
But he would have the perspective.
He'd be walking around like.
Reading a story about a guy who was a surgeon, and his wife had a medical issue that was in his expertise, and he could have saved her, but if he'd done the surgery, he would have outed himself as like a former intellectual, and they both would have been put to death. And how like horrible that was. And anti-intellectualism is frightening to me. I'm terrified that's coming in America. I feel like we're waging wars on libraries and colleges right now, and public schools, and almost
bad
anything
books in there. All right, they're stocking the preschools with blowjob tutorials. That's all. That's all. Some people don't like that.
That's almost like not a thing. Like 99% of that is not real.